Well, I'm back from a not so brief hiatus here at Mr. Rodder's neighborhood. I'm sorry, everyone. I contracted the deathitis along with the with pneumonia. So it's taken me a while just to kind of get back on my feet and have enough energy to do anything, which I don't necessarily have at all. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here sweating bullets and I can barely do anything, but I figured it was time to kind of put a video out there. Because there's no matter, this is one of the things when you kind of just work with yourself, if you get sick, no one pays you sick days. You got to get back on the horse and start riding, and hopefully things will all work out. So here we are today. I got the Quadrajet off of the C20 Suburban, and last where we left off, we had kind of just ballparked everything, got it running, drove it for a little while just to see how things worked out, and then eventually come to some kind of idea for a calibration. I'm sorry if there's a lot of background noise. We're getting some serious rainfall here today in Middle Tennessee. But to get back at it, last we left off, like I said, the Suburban was a ballpark deal. And we drive it and figure out where we needed to go from there. Now, each one of these Quadrajet carburetors are generally made for the application that it's for. This one, in this case, is for a 1978 Buick 350, which was never in Suburban, let alone on a big block Buick. So what is happening here is, because it's a unique application, you're kind of going to have to be a custom calibration is what you're looking for. There is no book I can open. There's no diagram I can follow. I can just use the information that we have, which is, I got Cliff Ruggles' book here on Quadrajets. I got probably, if you're a Q-Jet fan, this is one of the biggest things in the world you need to download. It's How to Tune a Quadrajet Carburetor by Lars Grimsrud from Lafayette, Colorado. This is just available on the web. Just look it up, How to Tune a Quadrajet Carburetor, or actually How to Tune a Q-Jet. But I find this book very enlightening, and it's not so much the information at the beginning. He gives you the basic rundown on how the Quadrajet works. It's more or less the calibration parts of it, and then he gives you a breakdown on each individual jet and metering rod size to give you a basic understanding of calibration of what you need. So I refer to this quite often, and when I was really messing with this Q-Jet on a daily basis, that's pretty much what I was doing. But today, we're going to get back after it, and it's time to go from our ballpark down to home plate. Hopefully we can get within the infield here, so we have an idea of which way we need to go, if we need to go any other direction, or our Q-Jet is actually can we live with what we have? It's always a trial and error to try to get the thing ironed out, especially when you're talking custom calibration that came on nothing. So in this case, if you remember, we had 70 primary metering rods, or 70 primary jets, and then originally I had a 44 full tapered rod from Cliff's High Performance, and it actually ran a lot better than what it did, and a lot of it I would have to attribute to the air horn having the smaller main air bleeds. That's the thing that when you're looking at each Quadrajet being a custom calibration to its original design from General Motors, right? So not even General Motors, if it was a Quadrajet designed to be on a 360 Chrysler, right? Its custom calibration is designed for that engine with that camshaft with the application it's practically applied to be used in. Okay, so let's say you got a Quadrajet on a Mopar truck, right, from 1978. It is going to be custom calibrated with jets, metering rods, the main air bleeds, and the idle air restricting, all designed around that 360 cubic inch low compression V8 and with a very small camshaft in a towing application for a truck. In our case, this was at the time, an emissions-friendly carburetor. 1978, car emissions were higher and tighter and more stringent than trucks, especially a 3/4 ton and up variety, which really didn't have as many restrictions on them until the later 90s. But when you're looking at it from that application, our carburetor is, like I said, we were trying to get it within the ballpark, but it's nowhere near what we really need for drivability. The starting and running of it might be fine. You know, the idle mixture is completely the idle mixture circuit. There's nothing else in what it does nothing else but idle mixture, okay? The drivability factor is in the primary metering circuit, okay? So when you're talking about it taking off well from a stop sign, or when you mat it, it has decent acceleration before the secondaries come open. These are the things that you're gonna have to iron out in a custom application, because you have to understand what your carburetor is doing to make any major changes like that. Okay, so in our case, since it was custom calibrated to be on a Buick 350, the main air bleeds, the idle air restriction, the idle air circuit was all designed around 350 cubic inches in a LeSabre, a 78 LeSabre. Okay, so its calibration is just for that. Now, if you read this Cliff Ruggles book, Cliff Ruggles talks about this same situation where he says the first thing you need to do when you're trying to do a custom Quadrajet is you play with the jets, okay? You find out which jet the carburetor likes the most, all right? In this case, our carburetor originally came with a 73 jet and a 47 metering rod, okay? Which is a larger diameter metering rod than what we're using now, and a larger diameter jet than what we're using now. Okay, so we have 70 jets, 44 metering rods, and that gave us what we have in our Suburban today. When I took it out last time, test drove it before I caught the deathitis, it felt a little weak off the line, and generally there's only two things that really make something fairly weak off the line, and that's one, you didn't have enough timing, or two, it doesn't get enough fuel, okay? It wasn't bogging, it wasn't backfiring, it just didn't have any real beans off the line. Some of it could be attributed to, I don't know what a Buick 400 in a 1985 3/4 ton Suburban with 342 gears is supposed to feel like off the line. That could be the case, but you would find that it generally in our application, and just about any application, you can kind of tell by the button. I know you've driven enough cars, or you screwed with enough things to understand when you don't have everything that it should be there, okay? And that's where the tinkering comes into play around what you have to try to perfect what you get. Now, what I have found is when we were messing with the Quadrajet originally on this Suburban, when it had a 455 in it, I went from the 47 metering rod down to this full tapered 44 metering rod, and the fuel economy went from 12 to 15 miles to the gallon. Now, we've given it more fuel. How is that the case? Well, the case is this. Before, it was starving for fuel. So you're having to give it more throttle, which is more throttle angle, which means that the metering rods were coming out of, the power piston was lifting up higher, and it was pulling the metering rods farther out of the jets than what was practically needed for the thing to go down the road. So instead of it just needing a little bit more fuel, it was giving it a lot more fuel to compensate for the off-kilter metering rod and jet combination in the primaries. So I decided, all right, well, the smart thing to do is we already got a ballpark. We know it'll run on 70 jets, 44 full tapered metering rods. What happens if we go back to the original 73 jetting? Because that's the one the carburetor prefers to begin with. So I decided, all right, well, we'll base everything around a 73 jetting. All right, so like I was telling you before, you can download this thing. It's from Lars Grimsrud, How to Tune a Quadrajet. I don't care so much about the 10 pages of, his breakdown on how it works, because I understand how it works, the basic understanding of how it works. What it does have is these handy dandy charts in here whereas he's giving you every metering rod and jet combinations you could possibly have with a Quadrajet. And it gives you your fuel requirements and needs, okay? So in our case, we got a 70 and a 44. So we know the jet size and the metering rod size. So here we look at 70 jet size, and then we go to a full tapered 44 metering rod, which it doesn't matter if it's full tapered or not. You're just looking at, and when you're looking at Q-jets, they're tapered metering rods, okay? So that means the very top of it is the 44, and the bottom of it, in this case, is a 26, okay? So every 75 and later Quadrajet, well, not every, a majority of them work in that case. If you're using a 45 metering rod, that means it's a 45 thousandths diameter at the top. The bottom is 26 thousandths, all right? If you had an 80 thousandths metering rod, it'd be 80 at the top and 26 at the bottom. All right, so that's your wide open throttle, all of them generally being 26. Now, the only time that that's different is when you get to what they call the 31M metering rods, or the M rods. The M rods came out in truck applications from the early 80s up through the mid and later 80s. Before there was computer controlled Quadrajets, they had M rods in them. A lot of the Quadrajets that were made by Edelbrock have M rods in them. An M rod is virtually the same kind of rod, except for instead of the wide open throttle being 26 thousandths, it's 31 thousandths here at the end, okay? And when things like that happen, you have to change the jet size to compensate for the metering rod being a larger diameter. I try to stay away from the M rods. They're primarily what you find in the junkyard or any of the parts repair places, because it takes such a funky calibration to get the thing right. And then really what you need is a different air horn with a different main air bleeds. You need different idle circuits, and it's difficult to make them work. You can make them work, and there's a lot of modifications you can do to the Quadrajet, but for what I'm doing, it's easier just to stay away from the M rods and go with what they would call the K rods in this case, okay? All right, so we know that 70 jets and 44 metering rod is a good thing. So we look over here at our chart in Lars Grimsrud's How to Tune a Q-Jet, and it says 70 jet, and it gives you a number here, okay? And so this 70 right here, and this number right here next to it, is the surface area inside the jet of how much fuel can actually flow without a metering rod, okay? Here is your metering rods. And then here is the surface area that the metering rods take up inside the jet. So between these two combinations, you come up with your full fuel volume that you can flow based on the size of the metering rod that you're using. So in our case with 70 and a 44, and you see over here it says 0.00232792. All right, that's how much fuel we can actually flow through that jet with the metering rod seated all the way down. Now, if you remember, the metering rod is tapered. So with this volume, that's at maximum vacuum. So that would be like, say, 20 inches of vacuum or 19 inches of vacuum. The power piston would be pulled all the way down in its seat. The metering rods would be all the way down in the jet. And this is the fuel volume that you would flow through the jet at max vacuum. Also, because the jet is tapered and at the very tip of it is 26 thousandths, you have to come up here and look at 70 and 26, and it gives you the fuel volume at max flow with it at 0 inches of vacuum, right? So the power piston, because you matted the throttle, there's no vacuum. The power piston moves up because of the spring under it, and the metering rods are pulled at their full extension within the jets, and this is what your fuel flow is through the jet after you have zero vacuum. So 0.00331752. Now, at wide open throttle is generally where I was saying, okay, when I matted it, it felt weak. All right, so we're trying to increase this number, but we already know that at idle, well, not necessarily idle, but basic drivability seems to be fairly decent. It's not too far off. So our number can't be too far off of this number of what we're doing, because this is the 70 and 44 combination, giving us 0.00232792 worth of fuel. We need to stay relatively at this number, but we need to increase the fuel number here at wide open throttle. Okay, and to do that, since we know this Quadrajet carburetor likes a 73 jet, what we need to do is compare the 7044 numbers to the 73 jet. Okay, so remember that the metering rod at wide open throttle is going to be 26 thousandths down at the tip, regardless of the size of the metering rod that we have when it's fully seated. At wide open throttle, it's 26 thousandths. So at a 73 jet with a 26 thousandths opening on the metering rod, or 26 thousandths taken up by the metering rod, we come up with as 0.00365445. And that is, let's see, it'd be essentially 30 thousandths more fuel than what this current combination would be. It's actually a little bit, no, it's not 30, it's 10 thousandths, I'm sorry. So, but it's giving us just a bit more fuel at wide open throttle, but what we're gonna try to do is maintain a similar number for when the metering rods are seated all the way in. Okay, so to do that, a 73 and a 44 metering rod combination, which I know will not work. It'll be idling pig rich, it'll have white smoke when it starts up, and that's just telling me it's too much fuel with the combination of the jets, the metering rods, and what the base plate and everything is, and the idle circuit is calibrated for. So we need to go to, we don't want to change the jet size, we want to change the metering rod size. So we know 73s work well, so we need to go ahead and just put our 73 jets in our Quadrajet, and then determine what our metering rod combination is going to be. On the metering rods. So what I did here is I did a nice little handy dandy comparison of what our combinations are and all of those numbers. Instead of just looking at the entire thing and getting lost in the weeds, I just kind of narrowed down some of the major factors that we already know that seem to work with the combination. So here's our 70 and 44. These are our numbers. So this is at your part throttle, which would be the metering rods all the way seated in the jets. And here's your wide open throttle, okay? Now remember, since these metering rods are all 26 thousandths on the end, all you're looking at is a jet size difference when it comes to wide open throttle, okay? So if you change a jet to a 73 to a 74, this is what your number is. But if you left, let's say you had a 44 metering rod and a 73 jet, this is what your combination is at wide open throttle. If you change this to a 48 metering rod, it's still going to be this same number at wide open throttle. And that's because the end of the metering rod is 26 thousandths, so it doesn't change. It doesn't change this number. That's wide open throttle here, okay? Just your part throttle number would change. So the area that you would have for a curve would change. All right, so I've determined that I want to stick with a 73 because that's the jet that it seems to like the most. And to get a 73, what we need now is a 73 combination, jet combination with a metering rod combination. It's going to give us something close to this number here, which is your part throttle of the 70 and 44 metering rod combination, the 70 jet and the 44 metering rod. So we need something that's relatively close to this without going too far, because I know when I bottomed out the adjustable part throttle, which allows this to go all the way into the jet, that it was a bit weak off the line. So this might be our maximum number. We want something a little bit fatter, so that means the number would be just a little bit bigger. All right, so to compare this against our chart, we already know we want a 73 jet, and we want a metering rod combination that's going to give us close to 0.00232792. And we know that the 44 is not going to do it. It's too rich, right? Its number is 0.00266,486. So it's quite a bit more fuel and idle. So we're going to have to go up in the size of metering rods on this side of the chart until we come up with a number that's relatively close to our 0.00232792. All right. So 0.0023. All right, so a 73 jet and a 48 metering rod gives us 0.00237583. Okay, and we got 0.002327. All right, so that's a 48 metering rod or a 47 metering rod is kind of what I came up with. These parts I ordered before I got sick, so it did take a little while to get them. It was only a few days, but when they came in, I was so delirious I didn't even care. But so I got a 48 metering rod, a 47 metering rod, and a 46 metering rod, and all these came from quadrajetparts.com. It's where you can pretty much get any Q-Jet parts that you want. Now these are, they're not full tapered, they're step metering rods, kind of like what you would find in a factory application. And it's not perfect, but it'll definitely work in our application considering that we don't have any other options. I don't have any full tapered rods in those sizes and they're hard to find. So, I think the smart thing to do is, based off of our numbers here, we already know that the 73 and 48 metering rod is probably a good combination for this. So I'll go ahead and open up the 48 metering rod here. And the factory metering rod in this combination was a 47. So, you know what, I'm actually, to be smart about this, I'm just going to start with a 47. It'll be the factory calibration that was originally on the 350 Buick. It's probably going to be a little bit lean. I'm assuming, I don't know, since no one's done this. This is going to get us closer in the ballpark than what we had before. Okay, all right, well there we go. There's our 47 metering rods and hopefully it works out well. So now we just need to reassemble our Quadrajet and we can determine from there if it's not enough fuel or it's too much fuel. So with that said, I'll go ahead and get this Quadrajet screwed back together and tomorrow hopefully we'll be able to do some kind of road test. Until then, I'll see you tomorrow.